Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Alex Hayes podcast. I am your host, Alex Hayes. Joining me today is Sarah Van Bourgondien,
Yes. Did
and
it.
she is a fantastic human being. I met her at the Sun Up Rotary Club here in Prescott, Arizona. She's just an absolute gem of a person. She is an experienced entrepreneur, multi-decades, and she is here to share her wisdom of how she did it, how you went from early entrepreneur stage all the way to post exiting and living your best life. So, Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. Talk to us a little bit about who Sarah was in your early days, maybe back in high school. Who was Sarah in high school?
I was always a wild child in that respect, meaning I had a tremendous amount of energy. I could get into trouble or I could, get involved with school or whatever it may be. My parents moved around quite a bit when I was younger. I went to a ton of different schools and I ended up graduating high school in Montgomery, Minnesota. It was a town of 2,000 people. I'd moved from New York to Montgomery, Minnesota. But early on, my mom always had super short hair and my parents didn't have money to have babysitters when she went and got her hair done. So early on, I was always taken to the salon. And there's not a time I can't remember that I didn't want to be a hairdresser. I thought the hair salon was so cool. I thought it was so cool that you could go in looking one way and come out looking different. The environment was happy. I thought the hairdressers were glamorous and everybody just seemed to be enjoying themselves. And I had always wanted to do that. My mom and dad wanted me to be an engineer. I definitely had the grades for it and the propensity for math and science. And I did go to a year of college, had a blast, blew through the money that should have got me through 4 years of college. What can I say? But I was always into fashion and watching everything from fashion magazines to people. I was very punk rockish. And so after I went to college for the year, I decided I was going to go to barber school. And right before I graduated, the barber and beauty board merged. So I got a cosmetology license too, but went and worked in a barber shop. I was 18. I didn't know anything about sports. I didn't know anything about the stock market. I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't know anything that all the dudes like to talk about. And so, you ended up talking about their sex lives because what else are they going to talk about, right? No, and I was kind of the only female in the barbershop. It was great, but it was very repetitive. And I started playing around with hair color and screwed up one of my best friend's hair really bad and realized that there was some math and science involved in that. And I just took to that. And that's how I became a colorist. And I love what I do. And I'm fortunate that I can still do what I do. But, I owned a business for 30 years and it was super fun, but it's hard. And so I was glad to have the opportunity to exit my business, being sort of savvy on how I did it and still be able to do everything that I love to do. I've taught for several color manufacturers. I love teaching. And so the salon that I sold in Santa Barbara, California, I still am in charge of their color education. I Zoom with the young stylists that come in out of beauty school. And then usually once a quarter, I go back and do hands-on training. I also am one of the mentors for the salon owner. So it's great because I'm doing everything I love, but I don't have the stress of the day-to-day operational stuff that can really drag you down.
I love it. That is an amazing story.
Sure.
There's a ton to unpack there. So let's start unpacking a little bit of that process. How did you get into a boys club barbershop as being a barber?
Because the barbers at the barbershop came to the bar that I was bartending in to make extra money when I was going to school. And they cracked me up and I'm sure I cracked them up because I was experimenting with my hair. And they basically paid for barber school for me because they overtipped me like crazy. And then afterwards I was like, okay, guys, I'm ready to come work for you. And they're like, yeah, we don't have many girls. But what was happening is they were expanding their business and they were going to attach a beauty salon next to their business. And it was kind of like the first test of me, if you will, like, how is this going to roll out? I really enjoyed working for the Picasso brothers. It was kind of like they, many generations of barbers. Their grandfathers are barbers. Their fathers are barbers. Their brothers are barbers. They had, I think, 7 barbershops. And I was kind of one of the first females that started working for them. At first, it was kind of like, I don't know. Matter of fact, the owner wasn't too thrilled about hiring me. And I said to him, I'm like, okay, this is a deal. Just give me a month. If I'm not completely booked by the end of that month, then you don't have to hire me. You don't even have to pay me. He goes, no, we'll pay you. But, and they're like, we'll see. What I did, there was a big mall across the street, and I went out and passed my business cards to everybody, giving them free haircuts. I didn't tell Pat I was going to make him money at all. I just told him I was going to be booked. And but 3 weeks into it, he was like, all right, you can stay. We get your gig. But you got to start charging people. And hairdressers typically have a hard time charging for what they do, because most people that are hairdressers are very passionate about what they do. And especially when you're new, you just want to play with hair, right? You just need to get the experience. And it's hard to give yourself value sometimes. And I find that not to be just a hairdresser thing, but a service issue.
What a great story.
Yeah.
And so from those early beginnings at the barbershop, what were some of those key takeaways you took and lessons you took from that barbershop experience?
Actually, watching people do hair, watching the barbers interact with their clients. Because to be a busy barber, at least when I was barbering, you really only needed about 80 to 100 clients, because men, once they get used to going someplace to get their hair done, I could tell time by my male clients. Dr. So-and-so is at this. I mean, it's a regular thing. And they did a lot of shaves. So they'd see their clients once a week, for haircut every 2-3 weeks. In order to be a busy colorist, you have to almost have, I think it's between 12 to 1,500 clients.
Wow.
So it's a very different deal. And what I took away from the barbers was the relationship that they had with their clients. I know for me, I knew more about my clients than sometimes their families knew about their clients. Because if you think about it, how many people touch your head? How many people touch your face? Not too many. So, there's an intimacy there, and there's a relationship there that is kind of a dying breed. It's nice to see barbershops come back, because they almost died off. But you see, the barber environment starting to be in vogue again, because there's very few places that guys can go to have that experience. I mean, they may meet their buddies at a bar or something like that, or they're very involved in a church, but there's that relationship was really special. And it made me realize how important it was to have that rapport.
What a solid lesson. And so from that stage, how did you go to start doing your own thing and starting to become your own entrepreneur, business owner? Like, what was that transition like?
So I went from the barbershop to a ginormous salon. It was a 60-chair operation. I think at one point there were 120 employees, and it was a specialized salon. This is the 80s. Either you were a perm technician or you were a colorist or you were a cutter. And I got hired in as an assistant in the perm department. I assisted 11 perm technicians that did anywhere between 8 and 11 perms a day.
Oh, wow.
And there were only 2 colorists. So that tells you what was kind of going on there. And then the straight bob came in vogue, and the perming business dropped off. And so my owner combined both color and perm departments, and then obviously color expanded. I really didn't think about owning a business, to be honest with you. I was managing the color department at a really young age. I had 2 owners. One owner was really super cool dude, and that's who I tried to emulate when I became a business owner. And then another guy who was a total jerk, and that taught me everything I didn't want to ever do. But I was married at that time, and my husband got a job offer in California. And so we moved to California, and there was nothing like that. There was in LA, but we had moved closer to Santa Barbara. And the salon that I eventually bought was the 47th salon that I looked at working at. And I had this big, long list of prerequisites. Like, they've got to have a great management training and da 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 da. And eventually it was just like, okay, clean and friendly. That's all I need, clean and friendly. And the woman that ran the business hired me. She's a very cool lady. Her name's Lynn Hudson, and awesome fashion and very cool salon. And I was there for about 6 months. And since I had been managing the color department, I kind of had an understanding of how much products you need to sell, how much you should be spending with your professional inventory, all that stuff. And I realized really quickly that she was not making money. And the assistant of that salon, which was, I think, only 7 chairs at that point, had to answer the phone when the receptionist went on break. And so I was sitting up at the desk and a woman calls and she insists on talking to the owner of the salon. And no one ever bothered Lynn when she was behind the chair, but this woman insisted. And she picked up the phone and she said, as in more than one, as in more than two, as in three, as in more than one, as in more than two, as in three. She adopted infant triplets. And Mark and Lynn had tried to adopt several times and it fell through. And they decided, well, let's do it. And it was at that point she didn't want to own the salon anymore. And there was another woman that worked there. Her name was Cindy Hopperstad, and we had become friends. And Cindy was about 10 years older than I was at the time. I'm like, we should buy this. You and I, we should be partners. And she's like, you think? I'm like, yeah. So I call my mom and dad because I was 27. And I called my mom and dad. I'm like, I want to buy this salon. And my dad's like, okay, well, why don't you write a business plan? I'm like, what's that? And he goes, well, if you don't know what a business plan is, you can't buy a salon. You can't buy a business. So free internet, right? Went to the library. How do you write a business plan? Wrote a business plan, showed it to my dad. And my dad was in acquisitions for a huge conglomerate. So he's like, okay, go get financing. I was like, how do you do that? He goes, well, can't get financing, can't own a business. And so that's kind of how my father was a great mentor to me and didn't allow me to slip into anything. The more I researched and the more I was at the library and the more I was talking to bankers, and I was refused by 9 different banks. 27, college debt, didn't own anything, and I come walking in, I'm like, yeah, I want to buy a business. It was funny because I had an interview set up with this one bank, like, we're talking like I'm running out of banks. And I had an appointment with the manager of the bank, and the manager of the bank happened to be sick that day. So the owner of the bank happened just to step in, and he was an older gentleman, a very successful guy. And I showed him my business plan, and I was asking for $12,000. Okay, so it wasn't a whole lot of money. Because, I've lended millions to people that had less of a business plan than you. But the 2 worst businesses a bank can invest in are restaurants and beauty salons. So how are you different? I was like, well, let me tell you. And I think, he found humor in the whole situation. And basically, I had to have my dad co-sign. And I was not super thrilled about having my parents co-sign a loan for me because by golly, I was 27 years old. I was an adult.
Yep.
And so I marched into the bank and met with him again and said, I will have this loan paid off in 6 months. And if I do, you have to take my parents' name off this loan. He's like, okay. And I did. And I ended up doing a lot of fundraisers and different things with him. And every time he saw me, he would just start laughing. But that's really, once I got in that wheel of motion of understanding, this is something I've never done. Now I want to do it. And I'm the type of person that once I decide that I'm passionate about it, just don't stand in my way. I'm 6 foot tall and get out of my way, and it was great. Cindy and I negotiated with Lynn and we bought the business from her, and Lynn stayed within the business. And 10 years down the line, Cindy was just about ready to turn 50. And she's like, nah, I don't want to work this hard anymore. And Cindy came from a trust fund. So, she didn't necessarily have to work that hard. So I bought her out. And my next business partner, that was my business partner for 18 years, almost 19 years, came on. He was an employee of our salon for 6 years before he became a business partner. And Cindy stayed within the salon, which I think is really unusual. And I think sometimes egos get in the way. It tells you a lot about the people involved, but very rarely do you have a business that's sold and the owner stays within the business, and then a partnership change and the partner stays in the business. Because that can be a challenge. It wasn't easy going through negotiations with either one of those people. But, when we worked behind the chair next to each other, it was all very professional. And eventually the egos kind of fade away. You have this one focus. I mean, this was Lynn's baby for 10 years, and then it was Cindy's baby for 10 years. And they were both, and they still are amazing people. Lynn still works within the business. Um, and, Cindy has since retired, but they were always very helpful with supporting my business partner and I. And I think that really made a very cohesive core group of people. It was also a really good environment for young people to come in to understand the relationship. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. This is cool. Like, these people aren't going anywhere. Like, if they're not going anywhere, why would I go anywhere? And so, our biggest goal was always retention of our staff and clients, of course. But our clients are important, but staff was way more important. I always referred to our business as an upside down pyramid. Staff was on the top, then, clients, and then my business partner and I were the bottom feeders. And that worked out really well.
Talk to me a little bit about, again, so much to unpack there, but if we could go back just a little bit, I think there was a key shift in your mind where you went from being the operator, touching the head, being involved with the hands and actually doing the job. And then at 27, you decide to be a business owner, and then you dive really headfirst into the education of what business means. I think there's a lot to unpack there still, because you have to learn business economics, you had to learn negotiation skills, team retention. How did you approach the purchase of your business? How did you navigate that negotiation with the legacy owner?
That's a super great question on so many platforms. I can tell you this right now. It was dinner time. Ever since I was really little, my dad always talked about business at the dinner table. He would always ask us two things when we sat down. What did you learn in school today and what's happening in the world around you? He talked a lot about his business. And my dad's an immigrant, and it's the American dream. He started out as, sweeper in a flour mill and then eventually became the CEO of this conglomerate, right? I don't know if you can do that now, because, education is, you have to have a master's, you have to, and eventually he did get all those things. But I think it was always intriguing to me. And then the opportunity with Lynn, it was the next challenge for me, because I had a lot of experience. I'd been teaching for a significant period of time. I was also surrounded around very successful salon owners. And, the key thing about negotiations, right? You have to be willing to walk away. And that was a hard lesson because I wanted it now, right? But if the numbers didn't work, they didn't work. And her business wasn't making money. And in the salon industry, a lot of times when you sell a business, it's furnitures and fixtures, because a lot of salons don't run like a corporation. And that to me was something that I wanted to make our industry more professional. And it was just starting to happen in the 90s, where you had major conglomerates like my father's businesses investing in starting up Great Clips. And, because there's a lot of money to be had in the beauty business, right? And a lot of businesses were getting diversified. It wasn't just you had this product, you needed to do different things. And so everything started to get either, franchises started.
Yeah.
That wasn't something. It was family-owned stuff, like the Ficasellos that I worked for. Family-owned, right? 9 barbershops. That was all, but then you had conglomerates getting behind it, which then brought in more of a corporate structure. And even though my beauty salon, we only had 5 people when we started, we still, set goals and started doing things that corporations did. And we treated it like a corporation. We had benefit packages for our staff. That was never heard of. Education. Education benefits. They had a lot of money to spend every year on education. And we brought in a lot of money every year for education. It's just like any other business. I have to say, doing hair and running a business, it's like being a professional basketball player and owning a restaurant. I mean, they're two different beasts. And I think the hardest thing was okay, we've got a business plan. Okay, this is all we need to do. But every year things change. And every year we would look at our business plan and say, okay, what's going to change now? And I know because it probably took me 5 years in my business to kind of get that. Plan A isn't always plan A. You have to change it every so often, and you have to, like, the millennials, damn millennials. I love the millennials that work for me. Millennials have a better work play balance than I did. Like, when I first started in hair, I wanted to do hair 14 hours a day, and it was required. And I always had this thing where, you only had 2 weeks paid vacation. That was it. No more than that. And they're like, yeah, but I might want to go to Europe for a month. It's like, you can't do that. And then I realized that they're super smart, and all I had to do is give them a goal. Here are your numbers, hit them, and they did it. It's like, why didn't I do that when I was your age, But yeah, so, you have to change with how things are happening. And, like I said, running a business and doing hair are two different things. And I think a lot of times people, especially in my industry, think, I'm a successful hairdresser. I make a lot of money behind the chair. I'm going to buy a salon. And it's, a different beast.
Absolutely. Now
So,
you exited your salon business for a good sum. You did well, much better than just furniture as a fixtures. And when that's not common in this industry. Would you attribute your success, a lot of that success, to being able to have that business plan looked at, reviewed, and followed annually? Is that because you touched on it briefly, but
yeah.
like I feel like that's a pretty important.
And my industry is really unique. Okay. So if I ever had a problem in my business and I didn't know how to solve it, inevitably there's going to be somebody in my chair
Hmm.
that knew how to do it. Okay. Number two, as we grew, it's a 19 chair salon now. And in California, there's this thing called SR 3150 or something like that. I couldn't have any of my employees work more than 31 hours a week. So that was in 2016 that happened. And so I was very fortunate because I had a great relationship with L'Oreal and with my distributor that I bought a lot of my products from. They introduced us to a consulting firm on how to deal with this legislation. How do you make that successful? At that same time, we were busting at the seams and we were contemplating buying another salon. And so we actually went and met these consultants, spent a week with them, and they helped us through that transition. And we actually doubled the size of our salon because we expanded our hours and we had 2 shifts, 8 to 2, 2 to 8. And for our really busy stylists, we hired assistants to help them kind of condense an 8-hour day into 6 hours. And it was great because more time on the playground and everybody was making more money. So it worked out. But we had consultants that helped us through that transition. That legislation at that time was only in New Jersey and California. It's now expanding throughout the US. But that's why you saw a lot of commission-based salons, like pretty much everybody that worked for me were employees. When that happened in California, salon owners like, I'm going to make everybody private contractors because I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
And that's not the smartest thing to do.
You had it, you had both a plan of this is the direction this company is going to go. You had strategy meetings where okay, what's changed in the market, what's changed in our industry, what's changed in our workforce, what do we need to adjust for? And then you also added in on top of that, you added finding and being able to have access to those to other people that could help bring in outside opinions to help guide you with best practices, with optimization, specialization. You had access to a lot of these different things because of how well you were performing as a business. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that a good
Yeah,
summation?
and also, and when I met you and you told me what your business was, I was like, that is such an awesome business model because honestly, we didn't think about in 2016 or whatever, 17, about a exit strategy. But when we were with these business consultants, they brought it up. And we were like, we are getting older. Like, yeah, like we should probably start thinking about it. And thank God that happened at the time it did, because I don't think, especially business partners, you necessarily want to say, so how long are you going to be doing this for? That's a tough conversation,
Absolutely.
and maybe you have different ideas on how that strategy is going to play out. So we were already sort of talking about how we would go about it. Were we going to do profit sharing to bring in, owners? We were going to do, train somebody to be a partner, or whatever it may be. We started looking at all the different options. We asked our staff if anybody wanted to profit share, and we took some of our heavy hitters and chatted with them. They're like, yeah, no, it's like, okay. There was one woman that was kind of interested. I didn't really take her serious because she's a part-time employee, mom, busy, and she's the owner of the salon now.
Wow.
She bought the salon as a part-time employee.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
you went through this whole process though, where you were trying to, the consultancy kind of forced you to start thinking about what was the purpose of this? What are we building towards? What's the exit going to look like? And you went through and you started evaluating, you included your key leaders, your key team members, and you had these sessions, you talked about it, and then you settled on a path forward that made the most sense based upon all the information that you had collected, and then including the right people, the right stakeholders.
And then things changed.
All right. Love it.
It's like every plan.
Yeah.
Right? You can plan and plan and plan and plan. It used to drive my dad crazy when he would have to do 10-year projected plans in his business. Even 5 years is hard. But yeah, the plan was, I knew that I was going to have to be spending more time in Prescott because my parents lived here. My parents have been here for about 20 years. And my dad has suffered from dementia, and he's a super happy dude. But I always told my parents I'd be there when they got older, and my parents are super cool, so it wasn't a burden by any means. And I had been used to coming to Prescott, and really, I love this little Mayberry. It's very cool, right? And we were going to bring Blair, who's a new owner, in. What the plan was, we were going to take a couple years to train her to step in and be business partners with my last business partner. And I would step out of being a partner and become an employee. So I could have a little bit more of a flexible schedule. And if I needed to, take some time off, I could take some time off, and it wouldn't be such a burden on the business. Because, my business partner and I both worked in the business, and without us in the business, it would not have been as successful as it is. So, and then my business partner and I had a huge disagreement on how to manage a certain situation. That's when the plan changed.
Interesting.
And through that process, Blair's like, I don't want to be his business partner. And it was a very, very volatile time. My staff was not thrilled with him. So I basically paid him not to be in the salon. I paid his salary and his expenses and his healthcare. We were negotiating through that process. And he had no reason to want to come to a, closure. He was living large, having a good time without having to be within the business.
How did you approach that conversation?
It was ugly. It was ugly. And it was like, hey, okay, so you buy me out, I buy you out, or do we just close the doors? But
like
we
that.
still had a lease. And it was not a pretty ending. It really wasn't. And like I said, there was no hurry for him to come to a solution. And then this wonderful thing called COVID-19 hit. And I know this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but sometimes when things are so heavy and so hard, sometimes you have to look at these hard, heavy things as an possible opportunity. My business partner kept saying, I'm 50% of the business. Yeah, well, yeah, it's great to be 50% of a business when the business is doing great. Right after Christmas during COVID-19, there was a day that I was only stylist working. Okay. Everybody had gotten sick
Oh my gosh.
and we were bleeding money. I mean, just bleeding money. The anxiety level was like, right? I'm trying to negotiate with my business partner. COVID-19 hit. COVID was a weird thing anyways, but we survived COVID, right? And then COVID-19 happens. And, salons in California were closed already for 7 months.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And we still can continue paying health insurance and stuff like that because you can't have people without health insurance during a pandemic, right? And I woke up at 3 a.m. and I emailed my attorney. It's great to be 50% of a business when the business is doing great, but I certainly hope he has a little nest egg of money because he's going to have to infuse some into our business. He has access to our checking account. He knows where we are financially. He has access to our scheduling system. He knows what's happening on the books. And that's when negotiations started happening. So what I did, which is probably a little unconventional, but what we did is we had Blair buy his portion of the corporation directly. I gifted my portion of the corporation to her. We had a $66,000 employee retention check that we had gotten. I handed that over to him to help buy him out of the cash in the business. Because to me, that was sort of invisible money. I helped fund Blair buying um, his part of the business out. And I took a huge loss on the business that went against the capital gains of my house when I sold my house in California.
You looked at your strategy though from a holistic perspective.
Yeah, I had to leave the business. I mean, this was what was going to happen. And there was a moment, the housing market was at its, I knew if I took a loss on the business, it would help with capital gains. And to me, that's money, any which way you look at it, right? Sometimes people are so focused on, this one little thing making money in their business instead of stepping back and saying, okay, like your life, and that worked out great. And the best part is I still educate in the business. My hand is still in the business. I'm doing all the things I love. I work in a really cool place here. I'm living my best life. I mean, my husband and I just built a house. It's awesome. And I'm living in this wonderful little community. How can you ask for much more?
I love it. So you looked at everything from a holistic perspective of what was most important to you, especially at the time, right? What was you had a sense of where you were going, and you crafted your deal, your offer, and restructuring in a way that checked all your boxes, right? It checked all the boxes that you were looking for and helped you financially, even though maybe on the business side it didn't really look as solid as it could have. But on the personal side, the way that worked out, you were maximizing your return.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great, solid wisdom for anybody. Like also like look at the whole picture. Don't just look at one side of it. How does this affect that? How does your business affect personal? Because you're right. It comes down to how much money you keep.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not keeping it, then what good is it?
I know.
I love that. I love that. And with that transition, how long did that take in that negotiation process?
Wow. And I think one of my main focuses on the whole thing is I didn't want to shut the doors on that business. Because I had 25 people in there, that were busy people. And I didn't want to see them lose their jobs. And COVID hit, a lot of salons closed. There were very limited places for people to go that still had all the things that we offered. No one offers what they offer, what we offered. Salons don't do benefit packages and stuff like that. They just don't. Retention of your staff is the most important thing. Once again, the staff was the most important thing. And I was not sitting in some ivory tower, right? I'm in the trenches with my staff, and they're worried that they're not going to have a job. And they're like my kids, I mean, I even call them my kids. They call me a big scary lady, but that's a different story. But we could have walked away, but it's not what my focus was. My focus was always on my staff. And the negotiations took from September to February. That was a long time.
Yeah.
I had an amazing attorney. I emailed my attorney at 3:30. He calls me at 4:30 in the morning. Are you
Oh, wow.
awake? It's like, this is brilliant. And, a lot of, and this is very common. Like my attorney did not want to take me on. Like he was like, oh, a hairdresser, a beauty salon. I'm sure he thought of, Madge from Palmolive or something, who knows, right? And after several months, the nicest compliment I think I've ever had is Jim saying to me, I was mistaken about your business and I've really enjoyed working with you. And you're probably one of the smartest people I've met in my career. And I never expected to be a hairdresser, but it's a big money business. And I think, when you look at dissolving any business, it really doesn't matter if you're making widgets or you're doing a service, whatever. You have to take the emotional out of it and let the numbers dictate what you do. And that's exactly what I did with the dissolving of my business. Like, let's look at all the numbers, not just the numbers in the business, but what are my assets? What do I want my retirement plan to look like? I already knew I wanted to be out here. I already knew that that was going to be my situation. And the first year, actually, after Blair took over the business and I stepped down, I was doing 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, back and forth, which was a really nice way of getting out, easing out of the business. And, that was super fun that year because it was and it still is. I love seeing what Blair does to the business. Every time I go back, it's not my business, it's her business. And it's so cool to see the next generation take over. The salon is going to have its 50th year anniversary this year.
50 years. Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
I know, 50 years and, basically 3 owners basically now, Blair.
That's rare, that's rare air that you guys are breathing. I mean, there's not a lot of companies that make it 50 years. So that's
With
super
multiple owners in
special.
the same business and growing every year.
It's amazing.
It may not be like this growth goes, but it definitely is like this, which slow controlled growth is kind of the philosophy of Santa Barbara anyways. And so if that's the philosophy of the city or the county that you're living in, then it's got to be your business strategy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. I like that. Kind of recapping a little bit, you mentioned that you had a great attorney that was on your advisory team. Was there anybody else in that transition period that you considered either mentor, or advisor, solid? Who were those people that made up your board of advisors?
A few clients.
Okay.
One of them was my GP, Dr. Doug Jackson. He and I have had we had a 30-year relationship. He always said that no one needs a shrink, they just need a good hairdresser. And, there were just a handful of people that my family was very, very supportive. That's my husband was incredibly supportive. My husband is a welder. My business is very foreign to him. Whatever I wanted to do, when I came home and said, I think we need to take advantage of the housing market. We need to sell our house now. And I don't know what's going to happen with my business. And he's like, okay, we're going to follow your intuition. A couple of my clients that own businesses that had exited businesses, Dr. Jackson, best advice I ever got was let the attorneys handle it. You take care of your business, let the attorneys deal with the mess. And I was very fortunate to have an amazing attorney. And the gentleman that was my attorney, he worked for a friend of mine that I knew I used to do triathlon and I knew him through triathlon. And I called him up. I'm like, Joe, I need some help. And he's like, I got the guy for you. And then I get the guy and the guy's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, our first meeting, he was like, so what do you want out of this? Like, I mean, literally, he was just like, this is ridiculous. You're going to spend a lot of money and stuff. And I said, well, I want to save these people their jobs. I that's my biggest concern. He's like, well, it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's like, okay, he goes, well, let me, look at your numbers and I'll take a look at it. Call me. He's like, do you guys make money? You guys make a lot of money. Like, and I'm like, yeah, we do hair, and he's kind of balding, but yeah, the law, that was a whole different lesson, right? Getting through COVID and stuff, but the law is very different. When you're selling shares of a corporation, um, you know, there's a lot of things that go along with that I had no clue about and learned a lot about. I made some mistakes in the beginning. because I thought we could just solve it. And then he lawyered up and it was like, okay, I guess we can't just solve it. That was a lesson,
Yeah.
you know?
So it sounds like you collected a lot of really experienced people that were around you. You had some really good
Yeah.
people in your ear
Yeah.
helping you through this whole process. You didn't have to go through it alone. I think that's awesome.
And, I don't know why people feel like they need to go through it alone. There's always people that have dissolved their businesses, right? There are always people that, you know, exit poorly and exit successfully. It's kind of like playing tennis, right? If you want to play tennis better, you're not going to play tennis with somebody that's not a good player, right? You want to actually get kicked in the butt.
Yep.
And that's kind of who I looked at, like who had businesses that got out of their businesses that I know I could have a conversation with. But my attorney was really amazing. He was there for me at 3:30 in the morning. There was a lot of stupid stuff that went on and I could call him anytime. He would, it was a concert one time. He took my phone call, that it's that kind of stuff. And building a support system is really important. Now, being a hairdresser, I need a ton of people. Like I said, there's always somebody in my chair that's to possibly have an answer for me. If you don't have that support system around you, that's when people need people like you that can walk you through the steps, because evaluating your business, okay? It's one thing when you evaluate your business because you're going to get a insurance policy on your partners, like, just in case something happens to one partner, you evaluate your business and it's a number. But when you sell your business, what are you actually selling? Because like in my business, you can't sell people. Like slavery was abolished a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And you can't, you can't sell your clients, you can't sell your staff. You can look at sales and possibly evaluate where your sales are. And we were well over $1 million business, so it wasn't like we didn't have sales. We had good faith. Business has been there for 50 years now, right?
Yep.
So obviously location. But, I think that's why I think your business model is amazing, because when you decide to dissolve your business or you have problems in your business with your partner and stuff, you need a support system around you. I know I did not have the skill set alone. I knew what I wanted my goal to be, and maybe that wasn't going to be achievable, but I was certainly going to try as hard as I could. And then when you start to get people passionate about your same goal, it's amazing what they do to help you reach it too. If you get them involved in your vision and your passion, it's amazing how people really step up to the plate for you.
That. I love that. And now that you've gone through this process, and albeit very messy, looking back at that selling experience and exiting, what was something that you can say, yeah, this surprised me, and maybe surprised you for the better, and lessons learned, and then
Oh,
also on the other side, what surprised you that wasn't very good?
that's a really good question. We had a partnership agreement and then we had a corporation. Okay. Those things don't mesh.
Explain
Okay.
what
In
what
our
does that
partnership
mean?
agreement, we weren't a partnership. We were a corporation. In our partnership agreement, we had listed out, okay, if one person wants to get out, this is how we do it. And that's not how it works, because you're not a partner. You're not a partnership. You're a corporation. I would have looked at that legally differently. Like we should have had attorneys putting together how do you exit the corporation?
Interesting. So
We
when you
thought
say
we thought they were, or I thought they were good enough to go.
And when you say corporation, how were you? Were you a C corp,
Yeah.
LLC? Okay, so
LLC, sorry.
you were an
LLC.
LLC,
Yeah.
multi-member
hmm
LLC.
hmm
Even though you had an operating agreement, there was no the corporation was separate. You had a corporate
Yes.
agreement,
Yeah.
and okay, interesting.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I learned a lot about the law. And my suggestion for anybody that is in a partnership, however that is, like if it's a true partnership or if it's a corporation, you need to have it legally drawn up on how you do exit.
Got it.
Because basically our partnership agreement meant nothing. And then we just had, okay, well, now we don't have an exit strategy. We don't have, and because we had talked about an exit strategy and what we wanted to do, and sometimes, that changed as well. At one point, he My business partner decided that he was going to stay in the business for a few more years. And, Blair was going to come on as his partner. I thought that we would exit at the same time. Those conversations changed, but we didn't write anything down as far as corporate bylaws and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. So that was something that surprised you that was not so good. And so the advice there is to make sure that any legal documents and corporation filings, make sure it all jives and make sure you get it reviewed by a professional attorney,
Yes.
business attorney that knows what it is that they're talking about.
And it doesn't matter if you're in business for, we're business partners for 18 years, almost 19. And so, you don't think about having to redraw what you've already talked about after a relationship that's that long.
Absolutely.
But the law has a lot to do with how you exit a business.
Yes, that's awesome. That's great advice. And so what's something that came up that wow, that part of the process was great. That worked.
My staff was amazing. It was a really, really stressful time for them, super stressful. They were just amazing. They're young and they were so supportive. Here, I'm supposed to be the leader, right? I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to be the person that, that supports them, and the roles reversed. It's going to make me tear up, but that was amazing. That was something I did not expect.
I love it. And that's so powerful. It sounds like you spent years investing into your team and your people. When you needed them, they were there for you.
Hands down.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And now looking at this whole thing, if you had to craft your exit again, but now you're looking with all your experience, what would you do differently that you didn't do then?
That's a really, really good question. Things happen. I'm a believer that things happen for a reason. You may not know why at the time. The only thing that I would have changed is, not having, if I could have made it less volatile. No one needs stress in their life, and including my ex-partner, like nobody really needs that if they can avoid it. If you can avoid stress, if you can just have it down on paper or have a very adult conversation and have it go well. If I could change that, I would have changed that, but coulda, woulda, shoulda, and things happen. And you just have to, even though it's hard, you have to look at where the opportunities are.
So you would have maybe tried to impose a little bit more self-control over those conversations and help guide those conversations a little bit better.
It wasn't self-control on my part necessarily. I would have had it down on paper.
Down on paper.
Yeah. Not just have those conversations. Have those conversations on paper. Document it. Have it looked over by a lawyer to make sure what you're doing is right.
Got it.
I would have done that differently, but I didn't know that we had to. I thought we did.
No, that's awesome. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah.
And I think the audience there is going to have a lot to unpack with this episode. And thank you very much for being so honest and transparent here. But as we kind of wrap up this session together, talk to us about your exit. Was it fulfilling? And what does your life look like now that gets you excited about getting out of bed in the morning?
Oh, well, I love what I do. I love doing hair. I have so much fun with, I don't have a job. I have fun all day long. I love working with people. And also I love working with the young staff, the young kids. They're so fun to work with. It's different every time. I learn a lot from them, and that I enjoy that. I also enjoy, I'm at a point in my life right now that, for example, Rotary. The one thing that I like about being involved with Rotary is it's, as we say, it's service above self, and being part of a community and really seeing the differences. And I have personally had several experiences where I've been able to utilize my trade to help somebody. We work really closely with PASS and those people that are transitioning out of being homeless and getting into job interviewing, and they haven't had a haircut for 6 years. I cannot believe a little thing like a haircut can make somebody feel so good about themselves that have been struggling so hard. And it's fabulous to see the impact that you can do, because this community is small. We were very involved in community in Santa Barbara, but in a different way. And here it's very hands on with the people that you're actually doing service for. Really enjoy that. I'm semi-retired. And so I get to do all these other things that I've wanted to try, but time hadn't allotted for it.
So you've taken back control of your time and you get to invest it in people as you see as
Yeah.
they need help and you're giving back to the community.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
It's fun.
that's an amazing story. So the last word I will give to you. What is one piece of advice that you want to give to entrepreneurs, business owners out there struggling with this topic of exit and succession?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of that. Because I think sometimes people think, and I know for me, my business was my life. Don't be afraid to step away and do something different. I think you'd be surprised. My father, when he retired for the first time, one of the things he said to me, and it's exactly how I feel. One day we're out on the patio and we're having a glass of wine, and he says, "You know what I like about being retired?" I said, "What?" He goes, "I can do anything I want. I can think about anything I want. I decided I wanted to know more about birds. So I spent the whole day at the library learning about birds." So go learn about birds.
Yeah, absolutely. Take control back of your time.
Yeah.
Go invest it wherever you would want, wherever your passions lie.
Yeah.
I love it. So with that, I say, Sarah, thank you so much
Oh,
for your
you're welcome.
time.
This has been fun.
This has been a blast. It's been a great time.
Good.
And yeah, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. We have lots of podcasts like this, lots of other episodes previous. If you haven't checked those out, check those out. We are here to deliver you guys high quality content, hearing from real stories from real business owners about how to start thinking about exit and succession planning, because we want this to be something that is not taboo at your dinner table. We want you to be able to start having these conversations with your loved ones and to really take back control of your life and your business. So, Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
This is fun. Thank you so much.